Hi, good evening. Welcome to Didsbury Arts Festival. I'm Vicky Clarke. Welcome to Seesaw, live from the centre of Manchester. Tonight we're going to perform a new live AV track called Aura Machine. I'm here with my good friend Sean Clarke. A little bit about the piece. So Aura Machine is the sort of first experiment with AI. And I've been working with NOVARS at the University of Manchester doing a residency this year where I'm investigating the sort of collision of machine learning and musique concrète. So I'm interested in working with materials and noise and seeing what happens to those sounds when processed by a neural network. So I've been working with PRiSM at RNCM and using this algorithm called sample RNN. And my question is, what happens to the sound object when processed by a neural network? So the piece you're about to see is in 3 stages. It starts off with the training data. So these are field recordings of Manchester mill spaces, different materials that I've been collecting. And then there's a transmutation part where the model is training. Then at the end, you'll hear the purely AI-generated output. So the idea is that it's the first experiment and it takes the listener on a journey through training a neural network. So I hope you enjoy. This is the first sort of test, trying to put these sounds into some sort of live context. So we're really pleased to be here. And yeah, enjoy. And we'll be coming back after the piece with a Q&A with Lucy Dusgate. Thanks a lot.
The genuineness of a thing is the quintessence of everything about it, since it's creation that can be handed down from its material duration to the historical witness that it bears.
athlete. Athlete. Athlete.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome, and I hope you enjoyed that performance from Vicky. It's superb. Just to say, I really like that, Vicky. Thank you for that. Also, the visuals from Sean Clarke, I thought matched beautifully. They really were lovely. I'm not going to do most of the talking with this. I'm just going to ask some questions. But let me introduce firstly Vicky Clarke, born in Stockport, so a sort of Manchester or Greater Manchester through and through artist who does tour internationally and performs in all sorts of festivals, events and venues. One of our really established artists that we're lucky to have here in Manchester. Also has chosen to stay and base herself within here, which is great in terms of the Northwest being a home for talent. But really, I think let's have a talk to Vicky now and find out a little bit more about that piece. You gave a brief intro, Vicky, but could you tell us a little bit more how that came about and the partnerships you've worked with to create that?
Yes, yeah, hi Lucy, yeah, sure. So I work with machines and materials for the last few years, sort of build my own DIY interfaces, very interested in musique concrète and working with the sounds of sculpture and objects. And I've been interested for a while in working with AI and machine learning, and was doing a research project in Russia where I got to find out a lot about artists working with these new creative tools that are available online for machine learning. And I'd done a few tests kind of with visual technologies, for example, kind of like style GANs, things like this, but not so much with sound. So I really wanted to bring my practice and my kind of love of working with materials and noise, and to see how I could work with neural networks to kind of produce new sounds, basically. So sort of typically in machine learning, kind of historically, there's been kind of ways of people kind of generating patterns with MIDI. But I was specifically interested in neural synthesis, which is the idea of generating audio and from samples, from training data sets, and working with that new material. So yeah, so both in terms of being a kind of collaborator with the machine learning kind of model, and seeing where kind of the human and the artist had agency within that kind of training circuit, as it were. So yeah, so I've been, I approached, when I got back from Russia, I approached NOVARS, which is the Centre for Innovation in Sound at the University of Manchester, and also contacted RNCM. They have a research laboratory called PRiSM, which is about science and music, and there's a creative technologist there called Christopher Mellon, who's developed a model called PRiSM Sample RNN. So RNN is a recurrent neural network. So that again works with these kind of massive training data sets of audio samples to generate new materials. So I was really keen to see what the machine would kind of spit out and how I could compose with that and also bring that into a live setting. So that's kind of how it started.
And in terms of, so you're selecting sounds, you're creating sounds, you're feeding them into this process that then goes its own way essentially with that material. Is that right? That's it. Yeah, you have to, so to work with the machine learning model, you have to have a training data set. So in this case, the data is audio. So I was working with I had to make about 90 minutes of recorded material. So that's the kind of music concrete side. So yeah, I worked for about 2 months to create this concrete training data set. So that comprised of the sounds of literally materials of glass and metal and wood, but also field recordings of Manchester mill spaces. I was interested in capturing this aura of this kind of these iconic and historic venues in Manchester, and kind of colliding these materials and seeing what the machine would detect. So the model looks out for patterns and features. So it's called feature extraction. So it'll look for patterns in that training data that it will learn from. So each epoch that it trains on is what is called an epoch. Each time it learns off that data. And then each time you get kind of an audio output at a checkpoint. So it's working with those samples, then seeing what the machine recognized, what it could detect. But also for me, the interesting bit was what were the errors? What did it not predict? What were the weird artifacts? And it was those blends and those kind of strange things that I wanted to kind of work with creatively. And for me, that's the exciting thing about machine learning is almost trying to find agency within this system. So for example, if I have a training data set, if I kind of put glass and metal together, will the machine produce a new materiality? Will that kind of do something different for sound aesthetics, for example? And then how do you compose with that? And did it produce anything new?
Yeah, it did. It was really mad. So so I went through these stages. So I had about 2 months making the training data set, and then sort of training the model, which was done on Google Colab, but also with RNCM, with the PRiSM team. And then I received back all of this information, and it was completely bonkers. So I spent a long time during lockdown listening to this kind of AI-generated output and thinking what to do. So yeah, the way that I kind of dealt with that was I reflected on that now, and I started to think that I was reflecting the machine in a certain way. So I was doing things like classifying the audio data that came back, looking out for things like tones, artifacts, weird events that happened within that audio, and almost classifying this by my own system, as it were. And then thinking how I could compose with that. But one of the things that I wanted to do for the first experiment was just to actually show what those textures were that the machine learning was producing. So not kind of overproduce it electronically, but really show if there was an aura or if there was a kind of a state that the machine was producing. And yeah, I found some of the material really quite beautiful, actually. It's very analog and actually quite reminiscent of like tape saturation a lot of the time, which was kind of quite interesting and ironic considering I was using kind of music concrete techniques in the sort of training set. So I've sort of completely fell in love with this audio world. It's very moody and quite lo-fi, and that's because of the low bit rate of the samples. So I'm sort of quite keen to develop this now as a live AV piece, which is what I started with Sean the last week or so. Yeah.
And in terms of that, the audio is beautiful, but it very much reminds me of almost the early days of electronic sound creation, sort of like the sort of going back to the Doctor Who and before that was happening. Looking behind you, you've got a series of equipment behind you.
Yeah.
Do you want to take us through a little bit some of that stuff and that you do
Yeah.
use regularly?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, yeah, just to say with the Aura machine work, it's very much sample based. So everything was sort of from objects and sampled, or from field recordings and sampled. And then the AI generates all of these samples. So my main instrument for this piece is the computer, which it is an instrument that I use Ableton. So there was a lot of kind of reworking of that material. But yeah, to go through the kind of stages of the set, to sort of convert this to a live audio-visual piece, I wanted to kind of take the listener through that journey of going from physical materials to AI. So yeah, so I'll just try and pick some stuff up. So yeah, to replicate glass, this is my massive Pyrex dish bong thing that actually my boyfriend found in a house clearance, which is really resonant. So yeah, so I was using that with a granulator pedal here to get those really like kind of lovely scaled glass sounds. I've also got, this is like my first sound sculpture that I bring to everything. I'm just going to go around the side. Hang on a sec. So this is a metal sound sculpture here. So I made this at the Manchester School of Art a couple of years ago. But I'm going to be making some more metal sound sculptures for this piece in the future, based on the visuals as well. So they're the kind of materials going in. And then I also, for this live set, because I'm working a lot with samples, I wanted to kind of work with those live and not just sort of play back material. So I've just started to get into, in a very small way, like a mini modular setup here. I'm saying mini because I know it's quite a money pit getting into modular. So the key thing is working with this module called the Morphogene by Make Noise. So this, you can basically, it's kind of come from Music Concrete actually. It works with micro sound, so you can load up samples. So here I was working with kind of AI material, and you can find those like granular grains within that material and rework. So yeah, very much working with this and some filters and things like that, but not messing too much with that kind of original source material.
It really lets you drill down into each sound.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's it, because I think the challenge is how can you perform live with machine learning and AI? And yeah, it's quite difficult, because actually the process of training a model, it can take 5 days. So to do that live is pretty long show. So so how you can rework samples, how you can kind of trigger events or kind of generative systems within that as a live set is what I'm exploring. Yeah.
And is it your aim to take this as a tour piece as well then, to actually generate as you tour?
Yeah, I'd love to, yes. This is the kind of first kind of experiment doing stuff live with it. We had a show at RNC and back in June. So I've been working, supported by Manchester Independents, with Sean Clarke, who runs Test Card in Manchester, who's a fantastic digital artist and curator. And we've been collaborating the last week in this amazing space called Seesaw, just working with these visual materials. So yeah, the kind of starting point for that was I had this visual language that I'd kind of developed through the residency. So a different algorithm that I'd worked with, just kind of a style GAN. I'd made like a visual training data set, and that was based on electrical circuit symbols, some technological sort of constructivist like icons that I'd made, and also looking at old alchemical symbols actually, because this whole process has made me reflect a lot on alchemy and this kind of like transmutation of material into new form. So the actual icons that you saw in the visual piece were also machine learning generated, but through a different algorithm. And those icons we're going to develop as a live show, as the kind of the syntax, the symbolic language of this kind of live piece.
It strikes me as well that, in Manchester we've got a real rich base of talent. You talk about Test Card that Sean runs, there's things like Manchester Collective, there's yourself. Do you think of it as a really positive city in terms of artists that are playing with technology, or just people that are collaborating with different materials?
Yeah, I think Manchester is and continues to be a really exciting, dynamic place for artists to collaborate and make work. Yeah, there's so many different art spaces which are increasingly getting moved out of the city centre, I might add. So it's good that you kind of picked up on that, because that was one of my kind of reference points for the training data set. I wanted to celebrate these Manchester Mill spaces that have come from industry, workers, taken over by art and music, but are now getting increasingly gentrified, and artists are moving out of the city. But yeah, like, art will always thrive where there's sort of desire and people want to collaborate together. But yeah, I'm really excited about the state of music and technology in the city. Yeah, really sort of thrilled to be part of this at this time in the ecosystem. Yeah.
And there's some great artist studios. We've got things like Rogue, Islington Mill, Paradise Works. I know what you're saying about the city centre being a little bit cleansed, unfortunately, because it did have a great history of those big warehouse spaces that nobody was interested in for such a long time. And yet we still haven't, fortunately, we haven't lost the ability to have creative spaces, collective creative spaces.
Yeah, totally agree. There's some amazing spaces. Yeah, Islington Mill, I should say, actually. I actually sampled the fifth floor of that space before the rebuilding. So I was there and at Wellington House, sort of capturing the auras of these mill spaces. So yeah, I think we've got a really vibrant scene, whether that's visual arts, painting, digital art, technology, music. There's so many things happening, and I think at this point in time people are so eager to see live music and get together after the lockdown. So yeah, we're really excited to sort of do more stuff in the real world.
It's something to me that really, the thing I enjoy about it is like a producer is lots of people like to collaborate. So you'll get visual artists working with performers, you'll get you get real porous collaboration, which you don't always see in every city. But it's something that's quite alive here.
I think it's knowing the people. I think, like, obviously collaborating with Sean Clarke here, like Test Card was really seminal for us, like back in the Noise Orchestra days as well. Bringing artists together to collaborate and just having a space to experiment is so important. It kind of raises your ambitions. You can try out stuff that you wouldn't try at home. We need spaces, we need this infrastructure, and we need support to do this off the council as well. So I think valuing culture in a city is so important, and we need to do more of that for the grassroots especially.
Yeah, and if you were a new artist, or you had met an artist coming to live and work and make their way, as it were, with Manchester as their base, what would you say that is the key places or people to kind of start to get connected to, maybe?
Yeah, I'd say a good place to start is through the artist studios, so places like Rogue or Islington Mill, Paradise Works as well, really good networks. You can look online, there's so many nights. There are places like the White Hotel is really good club scene, places that develop talent in the city. It's really easy to get in. It's small enough but big enough to kind of to meet people and get going. So just find people. Find your people.
Find your tribe.
Sean's telling me Test Card will be back soon, so he's waving at me.
I mean, for people watching, I can't stress enough how interesting things like Test Card are. They do bring a really supportive environment and commissioning opportunities for artists who are emerging or who are established. It's those kind of things that continue to exist and do well for everybody. For yourself, where do you think you're going next? Because we've had a year and a half of not really being able to perform much in terms of live. But what do you see the next year or so ahead? What are the things you'll be doing yourself?
Well, I've got doing this residency for the next till kind of December, January time, which is supported by Arts Council. So that's kind of continuing research. So the next steps for this kind of machine learning project are to develop the actual sound sculptures. So sort of some of the icons you saw in the visuals, I'll be making those as actual physical sculptures to then put back into the training model. And develop this as a live show. I'd like to do that and sort of perform more places. Another sort of really important side is the sort of education side as well. So I work with Brighter Sound and also Future Everything, and really interested in sort of sharing skills. So next year I'll be doing a project for young women to be able to get into machine learning and use these creative tools for their own compositions as well.
Is that something that's with an organisation, or is it an independent thing you're doing?
In terms of the educational stuff?
Yeah, that one, for example.
Yes, that's in partnership with Brighter Sound. So I'm a music facilitator at Brighter Sound, so I work with them a lot, supporting young people to get into music, music production, this kind of thing. So really looking forward to that. It's a really important part of my practice, yeah.
And in terms of international, do you think you'll be touring again next year, or this year even?
Yeah, I've been working with Mutec Festival, doing a collaboration with an amazing artist called Joaquina Salgado in Argentina. We've developed a piece during lockdown called Artifacts of Clay and Information. So we've never actually met in the physical realm. So we want to, we want to actually meet up and do that as a live show potentially. So that's been really exciting to work on. And yeah, I'm working on my first album, and that's the main thing that I need to get done.
That's great news to hear you recording on that as well. That's great. And if people want to find out more about you, where should they go?
Yeah, you can visit my website, vickyclarke.org, and I'm on the usual channels, Instagram, Twitter, and all that nonsense. Yeah.
If you want to find out more about Disbury Arts Festival as well, we'll be running the festival next year as normal. We had a year where we didn't run it this year, pandemic got in the way, like with many things. But yeah, Disbury Arts Festival will be running this summer of events. So it's been really great to kind of bring these artists, bring performances from everything, poetry, electronic music like Vicky, and also I think this is a collaboration, this piece, in terms of the visuals. So Test Card, if you do a Google on them, test-card.com. That's another one to look at as well, just if you're interested in this area of work. And if you don't think you're interested in it, have a look anyway, because you might be surprised actually it starts to pull you in working with some of these artists. My thanks to you, Vicky.
Can I also just add just a final shout out to Manchester Independents, who really supported this project. If you go to visit Manchester as well, they're supporting up to 50 local artists coming out of lockdown to realise new work, and it's really, it's completely vital at the moment. So thank you so much for that support.
Yeah, well, thanks to you, Vicky. Really love the performance, and I'm sure we'll be hopefully having you live next year as part of Disbury Arts Festival. And that's all from us. So thank you very much, everybody. Good night.